Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania is here. We are in it. It is all around us, the quantum realm. It's coming out on Friday. We've got an early review for you today. But first, if you have not subscribed yet, it'd be lovely to have you because we do all the big stuff like the Marvel movies, and then we do little things and everything in between. And we've got a Patreon, and it's just fun to hang out. And so we hit our 20,000 goal, which I was really happy about. So on to the next goal. We'd love to have you along with us to do that. So if you've not subscribed already, come and hang out with us. Alonso, since you are the comic book expert of the two of us.
Well, yeah, okay, relatively speaking, sure.
What's it about?
I'm the man who can give you the one thing you want. What's that? Time.
We open and with Ant-Man, Scott Lang, everything's coming up Milhouse. He's, people love him for having defeated Thanos. He's written a book. He's hanging out with his daughter Cassie, who is very politically committed and also scientifically minded, and is now played by Kathryn Newton from Freaky. And everything is just swell, except Janet Van Dyne, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, has been back from the quantum realm where she was trapped for 30 years, but just doesn't want to talk about it. Doesn't want to share, doesn't want to really, delve into it. But, well, she's going to have to because they all get sucked into the quantum realm. Ant-Man and the Wasp, and the original Ant-Man and the Wasp, Janet Van Dyne, and Henry Pym, played by Michael Douglas, and Cassie. And to get out of there, they're going to have to rely upon each other, upon Janet's knowledge of the quantum realm, and they're going to have to defeat Kang the Conqueror, played by Jonathan Majors, who we met in Loki, who has what seems like a very nefarious plan, but might be less nefarious than the plan he's trying to stop. But, that's a whole other thing. When we talk about the Marvel movies, there is this notion of like, how are we going to balance the sort of sillier aspects of it with the stakes? And I think this one does it really well because Ant-Man is kind of inherently the goofiest of the Marvel characters. He's the most sort of laid back and the closest to humanity, I think. He's not a millionaire industrialist. He's not a Norse god. He's just this dude who kind of stumbled into this whole thing.
He's been arrested.
Yeah, he's done time. He's a regular Joe. But so you've got that on one hand, and then you've got Kang on the other, who is like genuinely like intimidating and has like, if he gets to do what he wants to do, it's going to be bad news for a whole lot of universes. And so, yeah, I think it kind of meshes those elements together really well. The quantum realm itself is this very cool. I joked in my review for the Wrap that it feels like a mashup of every 70s prog rock album cover and every 70s sci-fi paperback. Between the just crazy side of a van vistas that we keep getting and the aliens themselves, be they people or buildings or whatever. So yeah, they have a lot of fun with that. But then, when Kang pops up, it is handled with the seriousness that it deserves. I'd say if there's anything that I was kind of surprised by here outside of just sort of, some plot developments, there's not much the Wasp here. Like Evangeline Lilly is barely factoring in this movie. She has a few big sort of heroic moments, but most of the film we're spending with Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Douglas, who get a lot more to do than you might expect. Which is great. Sort of, yes, absolutely. Usually,
no complaints.
The older stars become the window dressing, but they're very actively involved in the plot. Kathryn Newton gets a lot to do here, and Evangeline Lilly kind of falls by the wayside.
Yeah, we see her in the beginning, and we think she's going to be a significant force in the film because
her name is in the title.
Her name's in the title, but also you see like all of the accomplishments and how prestigious and how accomplished she is at this point in her life. And yeah, a lot of the stuff that she has to do could have really been anybody in that suit in the CGI world of it all. Like it's hard to, So that's interesting. I enjoyed this a lot more when it was silly and light, and when it was like almost an extended version of the Star Wars cantina scene with all of the bizarre characters that are in there. It's so imaginative and so strange over and over again. Yes, you can see the influences. There's a lot of Star Wars in it. There's a lot of Avatar in it. This feels like an underground Avatar in a lot of ways with the stuff that they fly on and like the winged creatures and the use of water. It's got some Blade Runner in it. I think it's hard to be a totally original thing at this point, but what they do with those influences is always fun, always clever, always zippy. And what I liked about the Ant-Man movies, what I've always enjoyed about them, is that they are playful, is that they are light, is that, the world is not going to hang in the balance, right? Like that the stakes are literally smaller, based on who this character is. And I really always enjoyed that. And here they are having to function more as a cog within the MCU, and in particular to kick off phase 5 of the MCU by making Kang an important villain, right? So it does take a turn tonally that I guess makes sense, but is not as engaging to me. I don't think. I mean, Jonathan Majors is tremendous always.
Yeah.
But it almost feels like he's in a totally different movie from everybody else, bringing all that like hefty Yale drama school training behind him. And
I think if you're going to introduce Kang into the MCU, better to do it opposite somebody like Ant-Man, who is maybe who Kang would consider the least of the Avengers, basically, and then let him work his way up the scale. You don't want to immediately like throw him up against Thor or something, I think.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I love seeing him, and I love seeing how he interprets this. We're doing a non-spoiler review, by the way.
Yes, we're talking around things.
We should have said off the top, we're not going to spoil. Maybe at some point in time, if you guys want, we'll come back and do a quickie little spoiler discussion, but we want to make sure that, because we're doing this so early, we want to give it to you guys as fresh and vague as possible. So it's a lot of exposition. There's a lot of like Jonathan Majors and Michelle Pfeiffer just talking. Like it's a fun first hour or so, and then it's just like explaining stuff. And even after explaining stuff, I feel like Kang's purpose here is kind of boringly, generically amorphous bad guy purpose. That's all I'm going to say.
I'm going to disagree with you on that, and that's all I'm going to say.
All right.
But I think the exposition is handled in a way that didn't feel like an anvil, which it so often can in movies like this. And I felt like we are given these hints of the larger Kang story that, look, we take it for granted. We know walking into a Marvel movie that we're not only going to get the story that we're going to get, but we're going to get all the sort of beginnings of the architecture for the next whatever. And as you said, this is the first of the phase 5 movie. So that's happening here. But I will say, I felt like this was satisfying in and of itself as a movie, as a singular adventure, while also giving me those, hints, those little feints, deft, leaning towards what we're going to be getting later and how that's going to matter in a way that I thought felt pretty organic and never felt like it was grinding to a halt to give me that stuff. To
say, hey, here's the next thing. Yeah. And along those lines, of course, by now, you've got to stay through the credits. There's a mid-credit sequence and one at the very, very tail end. They both matter. So stay around for those. Yeah, I mean, they use the space in the quantum realm in really cool ways because it is mostly dark. You do feel like you are underground, but they play with the space and what you can do in the space in so many clever ways. This is not a spoiler because it's in the trailer. There's a cool thing that they do with like multiple Scotts. Like there's a whole thing with like, there's a cool visual trick with multiple people at various things. And anyway, that's all I'm going to say. But like over and over again, like that was cool. That was cool. That was cool. But I didn't find the balance to work quite so well as you did, balancing the humor and the more dramatic stakes. So.
I mean, like, whenever I see one of these, I have to go update my MCU ranking list that I have that lives at the Wrap. And this one is firmly in the middle. It's not real high. It's not real low. But I had a good time, and I am sufficiently curious now to see what the rest of phase 5 has in store for us.
Yes. I brought Nick, and I enjoyed having to explain to him what Welcome Back Kotter was. That's all I'm going to say. So I'm saying 6.8. It is okay. I had fun, but inconsistently so.
Yeah, I said 7.2. We're not that far apart. For me, it worked. And yeah, not one of like the apex of this series, but it does what it needs to do. It doesn't take the big swings that Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness or Wakanda Forever take, but at the same time, I feel like the finished film is a lot more cohesive, and all the things that it does do work together well, as opposed to sort of like fits and starts.
Let us know what you guys think.